Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be going over our January 2026 wrap up. I read a lot of things. So before we actually get into the books, there are two books that I will not be mentioning in the stats of how many books that I read or DNFs because I don't want it to be a spoiler, but I cannot talk about these two books, Stardust Thief and Fire in the Sky, because this is part of a Fairy Loot video that will be coming out rather soon actually. So if you're watching this, very soon a Fairy Loot purge will be coming your way, but that's why I can't talk about these because it will spoil them. So not counting those, we read 16 books this month and DNF'd 4 books, which is honestly not that bad. And it was I believe a deficit. So we did read or DNF more books than I actually bought this month, which is one of my goals of the year. I don't really do a goals video because I like to keep those to myself, so it doesn't feel like I'm failing something if I do not do well in a goal. Anyway, side tangent aside, let's actually get into the books that I read. Let's start as usual from lowest to highest rated. And I don't think I had any 1 stars. I don't. So we're going to start with actually the 2 books that I did not rate. And both of them were for my Everan video, Canceling Everan. And the first one is The House of My Mother, which I did not rate. That is the story of the Frankie family, who was a YouTube family that turned out that there was a lot of abuse going on in the background. And so one of the daughters, she's got like a whole Netflix show, everything like that, where she talks and does interviews on them. But this is like her telling specifically of what happened in the events. And I thought it was decent, but I do think I watched a review on it. It said, I don't remember who it was, but they said perfectly what they thought about it. And it's basically, memoirs tend to be better if you are super far removed from the situation. And so Ruby is still, I mean, this like just happened like a couple years ago, maybe. And so she's still not that far removed from the situation. I would have loved to see this memoir in like 30 years. And that probably doesn't work necessarily because probably no one's going to be thinking about it in 30 years, but that is probably when you're going to get the most reflection on the situation. Right now, it's just very fresh. So the book was very factual. There wasn't a lot of emotion that was in the book, and that's generally what I like to hear about a memoir because I'm reading it specifically for that person's point of view, not for the Netflixified version of it, which is pretty much what it felt like, or Hulu. I don't remember who did it. It was either Hulu or Netflix. That's what it kind of felt like. It was just very factual, which is fine, but I wanted her perspective on it. So that's why I didn't rate it. I only rate nonfiction books if they're 5 stars. So that was not a 5-star. And then also for that Everyone video, I read My Good Side, which is the Sheena Shea book. Ooh, definitely not a 5-star. I am a huge Vanderpump Rules fan, so I was really excited to see her side of things, and I was kind of hoping to see a more human, less television-avized version of Sheena Shea, and unfortunately, I think she is who she is on TV. Like, it was very, very Sheena from Vanderpump, and it was very, I'm not going to take responsibility for any of my actions. Here are all my explanations why I'm the victim of everything. And that's exactly how the show was. There were multiple points during the show when she clearly made mistakes. And that's what I was looking for in the book, was her to talk about these mistakes and reflect on them. And she actually really glossed over them. Like, she would skip the sections where she did something and she wouldn't talk about it. So like the biggest thing probably that she had a lot of issues about was when she was married to her first husband, he had a drug and alcohol problem, and it was a big plot line on the show. Like, they tried to hide it for a little while, and then it became a really big plot line. And one of her most egregious things on the show was saying, well, I can't be with someone completely sober, just you need to learn how to drink in moderation. And she was telling that to an addict. And so a lot of people, she got a ton of backlash about that. She had to go over it in the reunion. And so I was really hoping she would discuss that in the book more and talk about why she didn't understand this. And she didn't go over, she glossed over it. She completely glossed over that and talked primarily about how everything was his fault and nothing of how her lack of understanding related to the situation at all. It was kind of sad. It was sad that she completely just did not want to talk about any of the mistakes that she made, which doesn't make a good memoir, because a memoir is good because you talk about everything in which you learned and how you applied it later in life. Like, that's kind of what you're looking for. Unfortunately, it was not very good. It was very Sheena Shea. Still entertained because Vanderpump Rules. Oh yeah, I should have talked about DNFs first. Let's talk about some DNFs. I'm not going to talk about them too much because I think all of them are from the book box video, except for one was from an Everand video. So we had The Second Death of Locke. I just don't want to talk about it. I was really sad. These are like the two that I'm really sad about. The Isle of Silver Sea and Second Death of Locke. I just didn't like the writing. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like pretty much anything about it. If you want more in depth about my reviews of this, I would check out the Reading All My Book Box books from, I think it's September. I think it's the September-October one. And then the other one was Modern Divination, again from the same video. I just don't want to talk about it. I was really upset about that video. So pretty much everything from that, I just don't really want to talk about. That's how not fun I had with that video. And then the last one was Ruth Ware's The Woman in Sweet 11. I was really sad. I read The Woman in Cabin 10 so long ago. I remember the main character being annoying, but oh my gosh, the mistakes that she makes in this. And I did not want like a sequel to the first book. I thought this would be like following the same detective and she was going to go through like a different case, but like straight up, this follows everything from the first book and just in a different location. And I absolutely 100% did not want to read that at all. I was not interested in continuing that story from the first book. I definitely think a mistake was made in not just like using her in a new case. I think that would have been really good. I would have enjoyed that. I did not want a sequel to that first book, so I DNF'd it pretty early. Okay, now moving on to books that I read besides the not rated ones. Like I said, I don't think there are any 1 stars, so I think we have to jump right into 2 stars. And I did have quite a few 2 stars. I believe I had I did change that to a 2 star as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 4 2 stars, which is very unfortunate. And I do try to go in order. So the worst book that I read this month at 2 stars, which arguably could be a 1 star, I did end up reading What Fury Brings. I really wanted to see what the drama of this book was about. And this was awful. This was so bad. And I understand. So this is following our main character who lives in a matriarchal society, like in her world, and the women are physically stronger than men. I don't think they possess strength more than women, but it's like when you're fighting a man, they're significantly stronger. And so our main character is like a princess, or she's supposed to be taking the throne, but she's in competition with, I can't remember if it's her, I think it's her cousin. I don't think it's sister. It's one of those. It's sister or cousin. And so one of the things that they can do to kind of make themselves seem stronger is actually steal a husband from a neighboring kingdom. And so she decides to steal a prince. And that's kind of where the story kicks off. But there are so many problematic things in this book. And I get the idea that the author was going for, because the author had a really good like opening introduction to this book to explain what was happening. So basically any time that you have wished for a man's downfall is pretty much like in this book. And this book was written from a place, it seems, of feminine rage, but I do think it took it too far. It took it too far because for me, why I love a fantasy book where women are oppressed is because generally the book ends with women killing the men oppressing them and then taking over. That's generally how fantasy books go that I read and that I enjoy. So in this case, you have a group of women who already pretty much run the world, and they are using their physicality to oppress the men and essay them and keep them enslaved and doing all these things that we hate when men do to women, but the women win at the end. So it just like doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of dubious consent in this book, like incredibly dubious consent, the point that it is highly uncomfy. So basically this book just made women into predators, and I don't like that. I didn't like that. I could not feel the feminism in this book. So I can see why people may read it a different way, but I'm not sure how, because I was reading this appalled. Like, I get you want to have this moment of oppressing men, but probably not to this degree, especially when a lot of the men don't deserve it. I mean, it's like, it felt so strange turning women into these predators, and it did not feel good. It did not feel good because I don't see women that way, obviously. So again, I think that's why it just doesn't work, because you turned women into men and you still expected us to like the women when they were acting like men. But we don't like men because they act like men. So I'm not going to like women who act like men and are gross. with dubious consent situations. So I really didn't like this book, and the more I'm talking about it, the more I probably should give it a 1. And I'm not continuing in the series because apparently this somehow is going to be a series. So maybe I will, you know what, I'm going to downgrade it to a 1. So What Fury Brings, 1 star, very disappointed. So now actually moving into the 2 stars, we have Thorn Season. I originally was going to keep this and continue in the series, but I legitimately don't know if I could tell you what happened in this book. Like, I'm trying to remember, but it is so generic, so mediocre, so written fine. Like, the writing is nothing to write home about. It's not good. It is the most basics of basics, and I can't remember it, which is, I feel like, a death sentence. At least if I can remember a book that I hated, it's like, oh, I can talk about it, I can remember it. It at least did something memorable. This is almost more offensive. Well, no, it's not more offensive than What Fury Brings. It's more offensive in the fact that it's so mediocre that it's forgettable. And I feel like being forgettable is one of the worst things that you could be. And so I think, if I'm remembering correctly, we have a main character who has, oh gosh, I don't even remember. Oh, I think she has some sort of powers, and the powers are illegal in this country. And she ends up working, I'm gonna laugh if I'm giving a synopsis for a completely different book, but it could be. For all I know, this could be a synopsis for a completely different book. But she ends up needing to work with, like, the king, and she ends up needing to work with this ambassador of a place where powers are accepted. And there's a lot of political intrigue and underlying stuff going on, but I could not tell you the point of this book because I don't remember. So I think I'm gonna have to call this series a DNF because I don't remember this book, so why would I read the second book? So unfortunately, this was a bummer. Can't remember it. I just remember not liking it. Next up, sadly, we do have a physical ARC that I got. It is Oxford Blood. I'm actually going to give this to one of my friends. I think she's going to like it a little bit better than I am. But this is following our main character, who is a mixed race student who got accepted into this very prestigious pre-selection program for Oxford. So you have to come in and do a bunch of interviews, and then from the interviews, that's where they kind of place you. And so this is a very, very elite program. Her and her best friend slash significant other kind of are going to this program, but there is a murder or slash death, they can't decide what exactly it is, that happens. And so it kind of rewrites the entire interview week, and she has to figure out what happened to this person. I had a lot of problems with this book. I talk about it in my mood reading vlog, and I do ask that if anyone has read this to let me know what they thought about it, because I think this book can be read in many different ways. I think you can actually read this one with a critical eye and find a lot of problems with it, but if you read it as like a silly, goofy, don't take it too seriously book, you could have a really, really good time with this one. But it felt weird because we started the book really, really strong with a character who very much wanted to fight the system at Oxford, because it is kind of a racist system and sexist. And so she was really excited to meet this female professor who had worked really, really hard for where they had gotten. And they were also talking about this statue that they were protesting against, because the statue is of a man who gives a lot of money to Oxford. I don't know if any of this is like accurate. I don't know if the statue actually exists at Oxford or not. There are protests against it because that man owned slaves, but because he gives so much money to the school, they keep it up because of the family. And so it starts off with like really strong premise, and then the murder happens, and that's really, really good. But instead of continuing with our character's whole life was about getting into Oxford, being the best of the best, fighting the patriarchy, fighting these institutions. And instead it turned into her fighting for finding out what happened to her very rich white male best friend. And there was a very awkward part of this book where our main character almost sacrifices herself to protect a white man who has been essaying many women. And I wasn't sure what this book was trying to say, because then also we talked about an amazing female police detective, and it was really, really hard to get into, like, be a high-ranking female officer, and she was completely incompetent. Like, she bungled everything. And then the other female person, the female professor, was a disappointment and didn't believe her when she was trying to tell her what was going on. So everyone I feel like that we were supposed to be rooting for ended up being an idiot. Like, all the women in this book ended up being stupid. It was just really weird. So I don't know what this was trying to say. So again, if you read it as just like a silly, goofy murder mystery, probably good. But unfortunately, those things really, really stuck out to me, especially like how the women were portrayed in this. It was really bad. It was really, really bad, especially after talking about it at the beginning of the book, like how strong these women are, and then they were actually idiots, and they were so stupid and so bad at their jobs. And it's like this, I feel like this sets women back, because basically every woman who was in a seat of power was terrible. And so that was so unfortunate. And like the most important one, the most interesting, or the smartest person in this book was a male detective. And it was like, again, what is that saying about the female detective that you were so excited about? So unfortunate. It was so very unfortunate. So if you have read this, I definitely would like to see a different opinion on this. And maybe there's just a different aspect of this book that I missed, because I have seen like really good things about it, but I have also seen some complaints about it that I also have given. So I don't know. I feel like this is a very divisive book. So I'm really curious what other people think about it. But otherwise, the writing was actually really good. The pacing was really good. I thought the characters were interesting that weren't part of that mess. So it had a lot going for it. I just don't think it pulled it together well. And then the final 2-star, which originally was a 3-star, but I have downgraded it after reading the sequel of that one. But we have On Wings of Blood. This is just an addicting series. This is following our main character who has been transported to a new world because she basically think if one of your fantasy characters, your main fantasy girly in another book, if she died, she's been transported to this world. And so now this is a world of vampires and mortals, and so she gets kind of stuck in the mortal categorization, but she's forced to go to this like vampire mortal school, and it's just weird. And so she gets mated to this boy, Blake, the bane of my existence. And I just really didn't like the romance. And that's pretty much all this book is her dealing with trying to figure out what's going on in this world, what dragons mean to everybody in this world, and how to deal with Blake because he's a pain in the ass. And I feel like that's the biggest problem, is I really, really don't like Blake. And my dislike for him in the second book grew stronger. And so that's why this got downgraded from a 3 to a 2. So it's still addicting. I'm going to continue in the series. I'm on book 3. I'm going to read book 3 when it comes out, but I don't really have super high hopes where the series is going to go. But if you want a goofy time and you don't expect anything good out of a book, you can try this one. It is a bully romance. I don't think it's like intensely bully romance, but it does have a little bit of that in there. Moving on to 3 stars, we have The Writing Retreat. This is fine. I think my biggest problem with this is people were very divided over this book. People either loved it or they hated it, but everyone seemed to agree that this book was crazy and wild and was unpredictable, and it was either too crazy for some people or people loved how crazy it was. I didn't think it was that crazy. Like, I feel like I've read this book before. I feel like I read a different book than everybody else did when they're talking about this one. Because to me, this plot, I feel like I've read it 1,000 times. So this is following our main character who ends up getting invited to this writing retreat, and her ex-best friend is also there. And the whole point is that you're in this very secluded environment where you can officially write your best book, and the person who impresses the main writer the best is going to get like a book deal with her name slapped on it to promote it. But again, the twist is so obvious. Like, it's so obvious what is going on. So I did not love that. I think I could have liked this a lot if the twist was not obvious, but because of how obvious it was, I just was kind of like, whatever. And I didn't love the end of this one. It was fine. This was a fine mystery thriller. Next up, we have Bat Eater. Is actually part of my rereading books. Did I actually dislike them? And I actually did finish it. I did not DNF it. I liked some aspects of this book, but I still think I was fine if I had ended up never reading it. I did not enjoy my time any more than I had the first read. So this is following our main character, Cora, and she is living through COVID, dealing with a traumatic event that happens at the beginning of the book, and she becomes this crime scene cleaner because they never say what she has, but she does have some form of like OCD or autism or something along those lines, where she does have some issues with cleanliness, etc., and she does struggle with making connections with other people. And so she's trying to live life the best she knows how. And she ends up making these friends with the crime scene cleanup, but she's starting to see things, and it's creepy. When we're actually with the scenes where she's like kind of seeing things out of the corner of her eye, terrifying. Unfortunately, most of the book doesn't follow that. Like, I don't like when a creature is like in your face. I like when it's like a creeping dread type of situation. And this to me was a little bit too in your face. But what really ruined the book for me is this was a sad book. It was a sad book. I like some hope in my books, and I didn't feel that way with this book. And also I had an issue with the friendship situation and what ends up happening with that. I think what ends up happening with that does actually regress the book quite a bit. I thought the friendship was the best part of the book, and because of what happened, it definitely dampened my enjoyment immensely. For me, this was just fine. Next, we have Automatic Noodle, which is one that I think I just had fun, and I think I just read at the beginning of the year. I don't even think it was in a video. But Automatic Noodle, I'm giving it a 3.5. And this is just kind of a cute one. It's a cozy sci-fi book that is following a group of AI robots that are working in, I think it's San Francisco, and they were opening their own noodle shop, but there's a lot of laws against robots and AI and if they're people or not. And so this is definitely an advanced world where this isn't trying to like say anything about AI other than, is this where the world is going? Where right now we're against AI because it's not something that really thinks for itself. But what happens when AI becomes true AI, where you have a robot that has human emotions, human feelings? What do you do in that situation? So this is talking about a lot of laws, and there was like a robot war. This is the aftermath of that. So it does take the cozy side of things, but it still talks about a serious topic, because eventually we will most likely hit a point where robots become sentient. It is the trajectory of the world. It could be 100 years from now, 200 years from now. It's eventually going to happen. Probably not in our lifetime, but it does seem like that is something that could happen. So this does talk about like, what are robots' rights versus humans? Are robots considered humans if they have these human emotions and these dreams and these feelings, and they just want to live and survive like everybody else? So it was really, really cute, and they just run this noodle shop, and it's adorable. I think it's fun. If you want a cozy sci-fi, I would recommend this one. And then my final book in the 3-star range is also a 3.5, and that is Two Twisted Crowns. I did read this after One Dark Window. Obviously, I can't talk about Two Twisted Crowns, but it is following the same characters from One Dark Window, plus add a perspective from a character from the first book. But other than that, can't really say anything of it. I did not enjoy it as much as the first book. I did have an issue with the new perspective. I just didn't enjoy it that much. I was really sad that I feel like the original perspective from the first book was really not as important, and that's who I wanted this book to be from. That's who I enjoyed in the first book the most. So unfortunately, I just like wasn't compelled by the storyline in the second one, and I was really missing that point of view. However, the book ended amazing. I was sobbing at the end of this book because of the relationship and the culmination of that years-long relationship and what it turned out to be. And it was a beautiful moment at the end of this book, actually. But the rest of the book, it was just fine. So our first 4-star, and I think I gave this like a 3.75, but no, this is a solid 4-star. This is a solid 4-star. There is no anti-memetics division. This was the first book that I read in the mood reading vlog. This was great. This is one of those books that I would recommend to everybody to try because it is so different than anything that I've read before. It's following primarily our main character Quinn, but there are multiple different perspectives, but she is kind of the glue that holds the whole book together. And the chapters are almost done like a monster of the week situation. So this is following Quinn, who works for the anti-memetics division, which is a very secret organization that the only people who know about the division are the people in it, because it is a division that actively wipes your memory of the division, so the people in it have to take medication to remember that it exists. Crazy, right? So a lot of this is talking about the unknowns that have these memory effects on people. And there's this overarching, very scary evil that people can't remember. So how do you fight something you can't remember? And so this is all about overcoming that. And the beginning of the book is, like I said, it's a monster of the week kind of situation where they're fighting individual unknowns to kind of give the audience a feel of what the anti-memetics division is and what these creature things are, or people, or things, because it's a lot of different things. And then it kind of eases you into the cosmic horror side of this book. The reason this is not a 5-star, because I feel like this almost should be a 5-star. The reason this is not a 5-star is because this is a cosmic horror, and it does get a little bit too much at the end. It goes a little too hard. I do have issues with most cosmic horror when it gets to the end of the book. At 5-star, cosmic horror are 5 stars always at the beginning of the books for me, and then it slowly starts to lose me as the book goes on, because the point of cosmic horror is kind of that you don't know what's going on. Like, it's so big, the idea is so big that your brain has a hard time comprehending the concept, and that's definitely what is happening in this book. But the romance in this, the friendships, the fighting the monsters of the week situation, everything about this is fantastic except for like one chapter at the end, and that's what brought it down for me. But I loved it. It was really good. It was really, really good. This, I could see myself rereading and potentially giving a higher score, because I know when to take my time more with this book and slow it down and kind of really digest what's happening. So I do want to reread this one. could be a 5-star upon a reread. Next up, we had Red City. If you want to see my full thoughts on this, this was also in the, I think, September, October book box video. This was like the winner. This was a solid 4-star. This one was scary because I actually really did not like the first 150 pages. I think it was like 153 pages exactly, because there is the first 150 pages are basically them. The book is following two main characters, and it's following them as kids getting into these gangs in the first 150 pages. And so once it switches to them being adults, so much better, so good. The back half of this book was a 5-star, but because of how much I did not like the beginning of this book and almost DNF'd it multiple times, I just can't give it higher than a 4-star, which is really sad. So maybe upon a reread, but I think how I wanted this formatted is I wanted it to just start with adults, and when they see each other, go into flashbacks and just give us some information in flashbacks. And I think this book would have felt a lot more seamless, a lot better if it had been done like that, instead of just info dumping for 150 pages about all this information and backstory that you need, and then actually getting into the actual story at 150 pages. That's just a lot of a book to do backstory and stuff. It almost needed a prequel. Like, it's almost like, here's a prequel to this book. Now read the actual book. That's almost what it felt like. And so I just did not like how that was formatted. But it's following our two main characters who, like I said, are in gangs, but they're in rival gangs. But they have known each other for their whole lives. And now they're dealing with the fact that they are on opposite sides of this gang war. And they are two massive players in it. And so this goes in a direction I was not expecting. There was a very toxic relationship in here that honestly I loved. I loved the toxic relationship. It's not the main relationship, it's just like the side thing that's happening, but it adds so much tension and so much stress to the story. It definitely raises the stakes in some aspects. So I think that was brilliant to put that in there. And so I ended up really enjoying this. It just took me a really long time. So if you are reading this and you're a little impatient with the first 150 pages, I would try and get through to where they're actually adults and actual plot is happening. And then the next 4-star that I have is Final Cut. This was a huge surprise. This is a young adult horror slasher, and honestly, this is everything I've ever looked for in a slasher book. I feel like I've always read a slasher and I'm always disappointed. I feel like my two favorite slashers are Final Girl from Riley Sager, and then you have the Final Girl support group from Grady Hendrix. I love those. I think they're great slashers. Everything else that I've read has just fallen flat because the characters just aren't interesting. They are flat characters. You don't really care about them. The book would work better as a movie. This one, so good. You care about the characters. It's on a movie set. It is so good. You have a very interesting final girl. And there's a lot of motivations behind what's going on. There's also a mystery. So it's following our main character, who is the daughter of a convicted serial killer, and she has decided that she wants to be in horror movies. She becomes obsessed with horror because it's a way that she copes with dealing with the horrors of her real life, because she says, hey, I like horror because I know that it ends. I know that the bad guy goes away, they get the bad guy, and the horror stops and you can go back to your normal life. And so that's why she kind of like clings to horror. So she decides she wants to become an actress, and she gets picked for this horror slasher that is really exciting. And this hacking and slashing starts on set, and it's so good. So part of it is trying to figure out what's going on set, and then the other part is trying to figure out if her dad really is the serial killer, because she's not exactly sure if it's actually him that did it or not. So there's a lot going on. I think it was really fantastic, and I think anybody who likes young adult horror or wants to try a slasher should actually try Final Cut. And moving into our final 4, it's actually 4.5, and it is One Dark Window. I did end up rereading it for my Did I Actually Dislike This, and that's why I ended up reading Two Twisted Crowns. I ended up really liking it. I really did. Upon a reread, I had so much fun with this. It's because I didn't have any expectations going into the book I was able to fix my expectations. That was the problem. So this is following our main character, Elspeth, and she has this sickness that is illegal in this country, and so she has to hide it, and she has to figure out like how to get rid of it. And they're also going on this like quest to solve other problems, and so she meets a lot of people. It's a very found family feeling. And the problem is, the first time that I read it, I had the romance wrong. I was shipping the wrong romance. I thought it was gonna be an ACOTAR situation, so I was always waiting for a different romance to like start. And I think that really hindered my entertainment of the book, because I did gloss over the plot a lot. So when I read it this time, I specifically focused on the plot, and I enjoyed the book so much more. So 4.5, really loved it. Really wish I'd liked Two Twisted Crowns as much. And then moving on to our 5 stars this month, we had 2 5 stars. And so the first one, it was so close. These are so close, but there is a favorite. So I'm going to talk about my second favorite, and then we'll talk about the number one book of the month. But we had Elantris. I ended up listening to the graphic audio. I know sometimes that's blasphemous, but I really liked the graphic audio for this. And I loved this. I was told over and over again not to read Elantris first, and even Brandon Sanderson said not to read Elantris first. But I am nothing if not a girl who loves going in order of things. And so Elantris was the first written. It's the first. It's very light Cosmere, still has some Cosmere in it. I had to read it first. I really needed to. I had to, even though I've read Trust in the Emerald Sea, which is also Cosmere, but I had to read it. And I loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the dynamics. I loved the world. Everything was so unique, and this held up so well from when it was originally written. I could not believe how engrossed I was with every single thing that was happening in this. And it did something I wanted. Like, one of the characters, there was like, I thought there was emotions or feelings one of the characters was having for another character. And so I really wanted that to happen because I thought it was going to be such drama and very karma focused against that character for developing feelings for this person. And it did happen, and I was like, oh my gosh, Brandon Sanderson, you knew what I wanted. You knew what I needed from this book. And so it's following 3 main characters. And so it's following like a princess from another country who is coming over here, who was engaged to the prince of this country, but unfortunately he died before this book started. So she's kind of stuck in this country. It's also following the prince who she is supposedly engaged to, but he actually catches this sickness that puts him into Elantris, which is this like enclosed area that all these sick people go to. And then the third perspective is from a religious zealot from another different country who is here to convert everyone, because if he can't convert them, then his country is going to come and destroy them. So it's definitely following their interwoven plots, but it's mostly following the idea of this place called Elantris, which is, like I said, it's this walled in area inside of this city. And it's where the sick go, because originally they weren't sick. Something happened that these people who originally are transformed into these like godlike things, they came down with an illness like 10 years ago or something like that. And now they're basically walking corpses. And so our main character who got turned into one, they're called Elantrians, got turned into Elantrian. His whole goal is to help people survive, but also to cure this sickness. And so it's just so interesting and intricate. And I loved it. And look how floppy this book is. I mean, look at that. So this is definitely a 5-star. I loved it. But it was just edged out, and I feel bad because it had no chance against this book. And I could see this being my favorite book of the year, like easily. I read your favorite scary movie, and this is crying, sobbing. Oh my gosh, the emotions that this book pulled out of me, which is crazy. So Scream is my favorite franchise, easily. It is a comfort franchise for me. I am foaming at the mouth to watch Scream 7 because because of what this talked about. So originally I was feeling a little nervous about it because of all the drama that happened, the firing of Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega leaving the project, and it changing hands a lot, and now it's like in a new studio. So because of all that, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to see this. I don't know about this. But I didn't know that the original writer, Kevin Williamson of Scream, is going to be the one directing and writing the new one. And so that's why everyone was willing to come back and actually do the movie. And that's why I'm so excited to watch it. So this book is about Scream. It goes through every single Scream movie, the backstory of it, who did what, the drama behind the scenes. It goes through everything, basically leading up to where we currently are with Scream 7. Like, this is very current. What this book really is a love letter to Wes Craven and to Kevin Williamson, who were the driving force behind Scream. And I loved hearing about how amazing of a person Wes Craven apparently was. Obviously, this isn't a book, but it's so many people that were interviewed and interviews were pulled about this guy, and it seems like he legitimately was a good person. So I was sobbing listening to like the care and the effort they put into these movies and the care they put into the cast that was surrounding them, because they had a lot of new actors that are actually in these movies and that were really scared about doing a slasher for the first time, and what they adjusted, what they changed as the movie was going on. And so I loved it. Obviously, my favorite section is definitely them going over the very first movie, but I love that every single movie was focused on, like, for such a small seeming book, there is so much information of this that has been compiled. And there's even a section in the middle where we go over some of like the pictures and stuff and how they did it. And they went over the special effects and how they did the special effects for a lot of stuff. It's amazing. It's amazing. I love that this didn't feel like just a jumble of internet facts. Like there were legitimate emotions put into this book and the interviews that were gotten from here. And I love that we had some interviews from Matthew Lillard and stuff, especially about him doing the new movie. So I'm just like, this was so good. So if you are a fan of horror, if you are a fan of Scream, I would recommend watching every Scream movie before reading this. But if you've watched them all and you like them, I would recommend reading this, actually listening to it, because the best part of this book, I listened to the audio and I'm so grateful for it because it is narrated by the voice of Ghostface. And so when he does the chapter headings, he does it in the Ghostface voice, because most of the time he's just reading it like in his regular voice, which is very Ghostface still. But when he does the chapters, he'll go, chapter 8, taking a stab at a sequel in the Ghostface voice. And I'm like, it scared me the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, that's scary. And then sometimes when like there's interviews pulled of him talking about stuff too, sometimes when he's reading his sections of the interview, he'll do the Ghostface voice. And it's so good. I love when that's randomly put in there because it gave me the creeps, like so creepy. And I love the section at the beginning where they talk about Ghostface for the first time and how they actually did his parts of the movies, because it's crazy what they made this guy do to scare the cast. So I thought this was great. I'm such a fangirl about this book. This is a 6-star book, easily in the top 10 favorite of all time. So I love this, would highly recommend it. Definitely the audio for Ghostface. So anyway, that is my wrap up for January. I feel like I had a lot of good things, some bummers, but I feel like I got something out of everything that I read, if that makes sense. So anyway, definitely let me know down below what you guys read in January, what you hope to get to in February. If you made it this far into the video, let's leave, I think I just did a knife emoji. That would have been perfect for this. Do anything film related, or just leave anything if there's nothing. I assume there's like a film reel, or there's even like a mask or a drama thing, something that is relating to film. Put that emoji in the comments down below if you made it this far. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like it if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe so you miss any future content. I'll see you guys in the next one.